Hey everyone, for today's video I thought we could draw hair. I'm just going to show you some of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm drawing hair. Okay, so just to go over some basic concepts is that hair isn't going to be flat on the head. So you can see that over here I've drawn some arrows to show that it goes down and out like this, wavy, both in the front and on the edges. So here's an example of hair that's tied up, and you can see how you're still going to be using curved and wavy lines, and the arrows are pointing up and down in the shape that it's going to take. And of course this can be a ponytail or a bun or tied up in a braid. Also pay attention to the hairline. Alright, so let's do some drawing together. So I've got this face done already, and if you guys want me to show you how the face structure and using basic shapes, just comment down below and I can do a video on that. So you're gonna part your hair, so part the hair somewhere. I'm gonna do a side part, and then you have to keep in mind that hair is very flowy and that it isn't in straight lines. You're gonna use these flowy curved lines. So I'm just going to exaggerate this hairstyle for you so that you could see what I mean, but notice that on this side I'm going to make it as if some of it's tucked behind, and also keep in mind that hair isn't going to be just one chunk. It's going to have little pieces coming out here and there. But this leads me into my first tip, which is just that draw the basic shape that you want, like how you want the hair to look like, and then add in these lines. So you can see that I'm adding these wispy lines after, which will help me make it look more realistic. So over here I'm just going to make her have like a very loose ponytail at the back. Actually, let's bring that forward. But as you can see, the hair is all closed up with this hair tie, and it's just very loose, and I'm gonna add more and more just loose hairs sticking out, and it's just gonna make it look a lot more natural. And as you can see, I'm also going to add hair at the top because nobody's hair is like really flat. Like you'll see these baby hairs sticking out and stuff, so that'll make it look a lot more realistic. And because this is a sketch, you'll notice that my lines aren't as neat, so I'm just really being really experimental with my lines. So this is how you practice. This is how I practice hair. So you can see that I'm just adding more and more lines. The more lines you add, the more shading you add, the more realistic it's going to look. And also with the shading, I want to be very careful, and I want to use the lightest shading possible, and then you can go over it and add more details. So even something as simple as this look, which is very simple, very rudimentary, nothing too detailed, you could see, and you can already see that her hair is very flowy and that it's a ponytail. You could see that I'm going to go in and add more little baby hairs just to make it look more natural, and the more lines that I add, the more detailed it is. So I'm just going to draw these little arrows so you could see the shape that I put her hair in. And the best way to do this also is to just look at a bunch of hairstyles, Google a bunch of hairstyles, and just look at the hair and the way that it's flowing. And I'm just going to show you the typical strand of hair here and how you would keep going over with lines. So a short strand and a longer strand, and some hairstyles will be more chunky at the bottom and some are more elongated. You've got the side part again, and I'm just going to do these wispy lines down, and we're going to add some volume here because remember, the hair isn't going to be falling flat against her head. And of course her head is slightly tilted, so one side's going to be higher, and the bangs at the front, they're going to be wispy, and the more lines I add, the more detailed it's going to look. So you see how I've added the basic shape first of the hair, and I've played around with it and what I'm happy with, and then I go and start adding in all the lines to make the hair stand out. Sometimes the ear will show through, sometimes the hair can be tucked behind the ear. It depends on what kind of look you're going for. But you can see that I'm following the way that the hair would go, and for this you really need to study pictures of hairstyles and the way different hair looks when it falls down. Okay, so I'm adding more and more lines, and the more lines I add, you could see the more 3D and defined it starts getting. So let's just quickly, I'm just going to quickly show you how I shade a strand of hair. So I'm going to do a close-up of a strand of hair, and you can see the way I'm drawing the hair is it's very natural. So it's not a straight line down, it's wavy, these wavy lines. And once you're happy with it, you're going to hold your pencil at the very end so that you can do some really light shading. And this will create a base for you to go over. And I'm going to leave the middle of the strand of hair, or the chunk of hair rather, empty. I'm not going to shade that part in because I do want to add some definition, and I am going to blend it out using my fingers. And now I'm just going to add the lines. So natural wispy lines down. You can practice this movement with your finger. It's like a flick. You're flicking your wrist when you're doing this. So I'm going to go down, and I'm following the natural lines that I've drawn. So I'm naturally following the lines that I've drawn. So you're going to just go down, and you could see I'm using a lot more pressure in some areas and less in others. And I choose one or two lines here or there to be darker than the rest, because you want to create shadow and depth, and you want it to look like it has a lot of different layers. Don't forget that there will be separate little hairs here and there. You can switch over to a different pencil, or even a sharpened pencil, or also you can just press, put a lot more pressure, and you can just add even more definition. So the more you go over, the more time you spend, the more detailed the hair is going to look. I'm just adding a few more extra strands of hair here just to make it look a little more realistic. And yeah, that's the hair. So you can see how much it changes the more time you spend on it. Notice the direction that I'm going in is downwards like this, in a very wavy line. Okay, so for now I'm going to switch to digital drawing, and I'm just going to show you how I draw hair in a bun. So the bun is going to be a little bit harder than other hairstyles because you have to get the hairline right. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to start with these light lines, and you're going to get the basic shape of her hairline in. And of course, it's not going to be stuck to the head, so you're going to add these lines, these curved lines that are going to be raised. and you're gonna add them. You're gonna keep adding them until you're happy with how many you have, and then you're gonna fill them in, and you're also gonna add these other lines that are loose hairs that are hanging out, because again, like realistic hair isn't gonna be like stuck to her head. And then you're gonna do the bun part, and you're gonna fill it in with shading, and the more shading you do and the more lines you add, the more realistic it's gonna look and more detailed it's gonna look. Okay, let's just go over some of the concepts. So instead of drawing a straight line like this with hair, you're gonna use wispy lines, and they're gonna be in these curves. So like these wavy curves, whether the hair is short or long, and you can use this type of shape. Another thing to avoid is these jagged lines when you want to draw super short hair. Instead, you want to really use the wispy lines to go up and down so that you can create movement, so that it's not like this flat zigzag. Okay, so you would really play around with the wavy lines and practice with the wavy lines. And again, you can Google images of short hair in order to use as reference. Another thing that you want to avoid is for super curly hair, just doing these squiggles. Okay, so instead what you want to do is you want to study the way curly hair is it's like a little chunk of hair that kind of curls in. So if you want to get super detailed and close up, it would look like this. And then shading is where you're going to really help it look 3D. So you have to pay attention to what parts are going to have shadows and what parts are going to have highlights. But basically this is how you're going to really make curly hair look natural and realistic. So let's just go over the curly hair again. So you are going to, depending on how curly the hair is, this is the kind of line you want to do. So basically it's just like the other hair, like as in it's wavy lines, but they're just tighter and they're more curly. And you just need to know where to shade it in. So you can see that I'm shading it in and highlighting opposites. So you're just gonna practice this kind of thing until you're happy with it. And the tighter the curls get, you see you're just gonna add more and more lines. You can make it as curly as you want, and of course shading plays a big role here. So just to give you an example of some super curly hair, we're just going to start here. I like to just draw some lines to help me out with figuring out her hairline first. So, and I'm going to do the baby hairs here too, because I think they're really fun to draw in. So I'm just going to do a few baby hairs here. Okay, so I've got the base shading in there. You know what? I want to give her so I'm just going to give her a headband. And that's one other tip I want to say is when you start out beginning drawing, using things like flowers in the hair or a headband, or even having the hair tied up, is a really good way to practice until you're comfortable with doing more open styles with a lot more hair showing. So that's the headband I'm going to put in, and then I'm going to just keep adding a little more shading and details. So you're just going to use pencil with medium pressure, so not too light and not too dark, and you're just going to add these curly lines and try not to make them all going in the same direction. So let's just add the shape, the basic line of how big we want her hair to be and where it's going to go, and then once we've figured out the placement, then you can just fill it in with all the curls. So notice I'm using a lot of different lines, and they're not all going to go in the same direction, and they're not going to all look the same. Some will be tighter, some will be looser. And the good thing about this pencil that I'm using is that it's soft, so I can add a lot of shading in to help me. So for the chunk of it, I'm gonna just add the shading first because it's gonna require a lot of work. So I'm gonna add the shading in first, and then I can go over top with the curls, and it'll require a lot less work. And now I'm just going to come in with this, I think it's a 5B pencil, and it's just a lot thicker and it's going to create a lot more darker lines for me. So I just want to come to the foreground, which is the front of her hair, the front of the back of her hair. And I just want to make sure I add in the extra detailed pieces so that it looks a lot more dense. Okay, let's take a look at what it looks like now. So this is what you have at the end. I haven't really drawn her eyes in because I'm not finished with the drawing, but I just wanted to show you the hair. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next.